Hey scooter fans, this is Adam from AWAYWESCOOT. I have the E-Move Cruiser right here we're going to use. Before you go out there and enjoy that first ride, there's a couple of tips and tricks you need to do, some bolts that you want to check, and we're going to cover that in this video. The first steps that you're going to do before you go out and enjoy that first ride. So let's roll that intro, come on back, and let's get this covered. Alright, so we got the scooter out of the box. Have it set up here, kickstands out, make sure it's all okay so far. So the next step we're going to do is just a quick visual inspection of everything, make sure nothing got damaged in shipping. You know, these shipping companies get a little crazy with their shipping, so you know, things happen, things get damaged. Maybe pulling a couple things, make sure nothing's loose, nothing's cracked. Anything that we need to maybe reach out to the manufacturer, maybe try to get repaired or fixed or replaced. This one shipped really well. Nothing was damaged. So what's the next step? Well, we have to get a couple of tools. So let's look at those here real fast. First thing we're going to need a wrench so we can have a tension, put some tension on the bolts. We're tightening them up or loosening them. Wrench is a great thing to have. Maybe some pliers in case we need to grab something. Screwdriver. With that, most of these scooters come in millimeter size bolts and nuts. So I have this nice little set here. It goes with the screwdriver. Comes in a variety of sizes, and these are great too because these are magnetic. The next thing we need is our Allen key set here. Have a nice variety of all these Allen keys in millimeter sizes. Great to have. So we can check all the different size bolts. You will run it into various different sizes. So to have a complete set here and pretty much cover everything on your scooter, it's great to have. Have some flat out for our tires. Now this is not a necessity, but something I highly recommend. Prevent those flats while you're riding. And the very last thing, which is very important to have, some Loctite. Now this is the blue type, not the red. The red's more of a permanent Loctite. This is the blue is more of a, it's removable as it says here. So that is a necessity to have. So let's get on to checking the scooter and what we need to Loctite and what we don't, and to go from there. Alright, so let's go through and make sure everything's okay. I like to work systematically. I'm going to start at the base and work myself back and then back up here to the handlebars. So starting at the front, going to visually check the tires, make sure everything's okay. There's no tears, no holes in there. Make sure these bolts are nice and snug. Now a rule of thumb I usually do when I'm checking everything, some people have asked, oh, what's the tension that I need to put on the bolts or the nuts to make sure they're secure? My rule of thumb is make sure it's snug. Not too tight, but not too loose. So you don't want to make it too tight to strip the bolts accidentally. And then of course you don't want it loose where it's going to wiggle out. So just make everything snug. So we're just going to check all these, grab our Allen keys, make sure these are all tight, give them a little twist and turn, make sure everything's okay. If you need to make any adjustments to the brakes, you're going to do that. Make sure you check the rotors, those look okay. So we're just going to inspect everything, make sure these are all connected for the lights. All the wires, nothing hanging loose. Moving on to the stem, this is the important part. All these bolts I would recommend Loctiting. Make sure these are okay. Anything that's connected to the stem, to the base of your scooter, definitely very important. So it keeps everything together, keeps you upright. So make sure you Loctite all these. Like I said, every scooter is going to be a little different, but there's going to be a connection from the stem to the base of your scooter. So very important, make sure you Loctite those. Checking all these screws, make sure they're all tight. Everything looks good. Nothing loose. You give it a couple tugs. Kickstand's good. Make sure we check our fenders. Nothing loose there. I do recommend putting a little Loctite on these as well. These get some vibrations, and so those are good to be able to secure on there. Check our rear brakes. Everything looks good. Rear rotors. Step around to the other side. And check your valve stems for your tires. This one just has a rear motor, so make sure all these are good as well. Make sure you have a stem cap on there. No cracks in the lights. Make sure you check all these screws here. Every single screw in your scooter, you definitely want to double check and make sure everything's okay. So moving up the stem to the handlebars. So a couple of these things will usually ship loose from the manufacturer. So you want to go through and double check all these. So for example, this was loose. The ignition and the throttle was loose, so we're just going to tighten those down with our Allen keys. Make adjustments to what's comfortable for you. Going to check our brakes. Push the scooter a little bit, make sure they lock. Make sure the adjustment is good for you too. Check our other side. All looks good. Turn the scooter on. Power's on, we got our voltage. Make sure this comes on as well. Now I like to adjust my P settings before I go out. Every scooter is going to be a little different, so you're going to have to look at a manufacturer's manual for that if they have that in there. If not, you can usually find those online. I do like to make those adjustments before I go as well. So check our lights. Everything's good there. Rear lights, great. Check our horn. And then just one last visual check. And that's great. Now we're ready for our first ride. So we go out and take our first ride, come back. The next thing I do is I double check all those bolts again, especially the ones that are connected to the stem or where it's going to get the most vibration or tension. Double check everything, make sure everything's tight. If anything came loose again, you might want to throw some Loctite on that for any future instances. For example, if any of these came loose again, you might want to throw a little extra Loctite on there and tighten those back down just to make sure everything's okay again. Do another ride, do another check. If everything's secure that time, then just periodically check everything, make sure it's okay. Now the very last thing I do is before I go out for my ride is I like to throw some flat out in there. Now this isn't a requirement, this is something that I like to do. It's a preventive maintenance, I guess you could say. I like to throw some of this in my tires, and it's just a little bit of more security when you're out there riding. You don't want to get it flat, especially on the front tire. I mean, I could throw you over the front, cause you to have an accident. So having a little extra protection there is a great thing. So definitely something to keep in mind. That's something I use, so I recommend it as well. And one last thing to check, and one more tool to have, makes your life a little bit easier, is before every single ride, I make sure I check my tires and make sure the PSI is correct, so you don't have any pinch flats. If you have tube tires, these are tubeless, but you definitely want to make sure your PSI and your tires are correct. For example, I run these tires at 50 PSI, so make sure you double check those, whatever PSI you run your tires at. And to make life a little bit easier, get one of these portable pumps, and I will leave a link to all these tools that I have on here down in the description. Get yourself a little portable pump and then these valve extension. This is great to hook your pump up to it, and then it doesn't have as much air that escapes the tire after you pump it up because of this little cap up here. So two things I highly recommend getting, because like I said, you want to check your tires before every ride, make sure you're okay. So I hope that was helpful for you. Answered a couple questions of what you need to do that first time that you get your scooter before you go out in that first ride. Leave a comment. Always like to hear from you guys and girls. Until next time, happy scooting, have fun, take care.